It has been more than 60 years since Cliff Richard stormed onto the British music scene with his breakthrough hit, Move It, a song often credited with transforming rock and roll in the UK forever. From topping the charts to filling arenas with sold-out shows, Cliff built a career that touched millions of lives and made him one of Britain's most beloved performers. Elton John was among the very first to call and encourage him in those early years. Though Elton's colorful language was unprintable, his advice was clear: go for the rotten throat. That encouragement, along with Cliff's talent and determination, helped turn him into a household name recognized across generations. Yet now, as Cliff approaches the age of 85, a closer look at his life reveals something very different from the glittering image his fans have held for decades. The story behind the spotlight isn't what many might hope to discover. What exactly has been happening behind the scenes? And what does it mean for a man who gave everything to his craft? Reflecting on his early days, Cliff admitted, "There's no way I could have said to you, I knew I was going to be a pop star. I just didn't know, but I wanted to be." That hunger led him into a life filled with extraordinary achievements, but also personal sacrifices. His latest release, Wise Up, isn't just another album. Instead, it represents a deeply personal journey through the darker chapters of his long career. In 2016, Cliff endured what he later described as the worst 4 years of his entire life, years that tested every emotional fiber of his being. The pain and stress were so intense that he admitted he would not wish such an experience, even on his worst enemy. It was a stark reminder that beneath the polished performances, the legendary star had been carrying a heavy burden. For more than 6 decades, Cliff Richard helped shape Britain's musical identity. He is often credited with introducing rock and roll to the UK, and his presence became a constant across multiple generations. John Lennon once remarked that British rock had little identity before Cliff Richard's arrival. His songs dominated the radio, his television appearances were frequent, and his live shows drew enormous crowds. Over time, he also became a staple of the Christmas season, creating music that became part of national traditions. But behind those milestones lay a different reality. The smiling performer fans adored was quietly grappling with deep loneliness and emotional scars that fame could never heal. Even now, Cliff reveals glimpses of how he copes with the emptiness. One detail that stunned fans was his admission that he leaves the lights on at night because he cannot stand the silence of being alone. Only recently has he begun to share the truths he kept hidden for so many years. When he finally opened up, many fans were shocked, realizing that the man they thought they knew had been carrying pain that all the applause and recognition could not erase. Hearing his honesty changed how many saw his story, transforming admiration into a more complex understanding of his humanity. Cliff Richard's career reached levels of success that most artists can only dream of. At times, his record sales even outpaced the Beatles, and he earned a knighthood for both his music and charitable work. But life in the public eye is rarely as simple as it looks. Though the media painted a clear image of him for decades, his reality was far more complicated. In recent years, Cliff has chosen to share private struggles that reveal the hidden costs of fame. His story shows that great success does not shield someone from personal suffering, and that living under the spotlight for so long takes a toll few can truly understand. In fact, the toll has become so heavy that Cliff has occasionally spoken in unsettling terms. In one interview, he casually remarked that he might be gone by next year. He didn't say it dramatically, nor for shock value. It came out tired, almost matter of fact, as if he were simply acknowledging a truth he felt. That one comment peeled back the carefully built persona he had maintained for decades, exposing just how worn down he really felt beneath the polished surface. The roots of his heartbreak stretch back to his youth. In 1961, when Cliff was only 21, his father Roger died suddenly from blood clot complications. The loss devastated him. At the very moment his career was beginning to explode, he was forced to grieve while navigating the chaos of fame. Cliff later revealed that his father had been the one to believe in his dream and buy him his very first guitar. Losing him felt like losing the foundation of everything. With his father gone, Cliff suddenly became the man of the house, responsible for his mother Dorothy and his three younger sisters. At just 21 years old, he had to provide stability for his family while managing the pressures of sudden stardom. The weight forced him into a disciplined, workaholic lifestyle where he rarely let his guard down. Caring for everyone else meant neglecting his own emotional needs. Instead of processing his grief, he buried it behind walls that would remain for decades. The losses kept coming. Watching his mother suffer with Alzheimer's for 10 long years was one of the most painful experiences of his life. Her death in 2007 was more than another funeral. It was the loss of one of the last anchors in his shrinking circle of loved ones. By then, Cliff had experienced so many losses that each new tragedy felt almost cruel. Like life was determined to strip away those who mattered most while leaving him powerless. Then came 2016, a year of both relief and crushing sorrow. Cliff had just been cleared of false allegations that had haunted him for 2 years, a period when his sister Donna had been one of his closest sources of support. But only weeks later, Donna passed away unexpectedly. The timing was brutal. Just when he thought the storm had lifted, another devastating blow struck. It reinforced a painful pattern in his life. Moments of reprieve often followed by new heartbreak. The theme of isolation followed him in other ways too. Back in the early 1960s, he released Bachelor, a lighthearted song about staying single. At the time, it was just a playful tune, but as the decades passed and Cliff never married, it became a kind of prophecy that shadowed his life. Now, nearly 85 years old, Cliff himself admits that the bachelor boy of the song has grown into a lonely man, dislikes being alone but struggles to change it. Journalists often pressed him on why he never settled down. His answers focused on career or never meeting the right person always felt rehearsed, leaving people wondering if he was hiding something deeper. In his autobiography, he opened up more candidly, writing that marriage simply never felt right for him. He wasn't against the idea, but whenever he thought seriously about it, the whole concept felt unnatural. That doesn't mean he lacked relationships. There were women he cared about deeply. In the 1980s, he dated former tennis star Sue Barker, and rumors of a possible engagement spread quickly. Cliff later admitted he had considered proposing, but ultimately chose not to because he didn't feel the level of love necessary for marriage. He explained that entering into such a commitment without certainty would not have been fair to either of them. That decision reflected a thoughtful, honest approach, even though it meant giving up what many considered a perfect match. But fame made forming authentic relationships even harder. Living in a bubble of celebrity, Cliff often wondered who cared for him as a person and who was simply drawn to his fame. In the end, the loneliness lingered, leaving him to face old age not as the carefree bachelor boy of his youth, but as a man reflecting on whether the price of his success was worth the emptiness it left behind. The relentless touring schedule and constant media spotlight made privacy almost non-existent for Cliff Richard. Everywhere he went, eyes were on him, leaving little space for a normal personal life. Someone who longed for genuine trust and connection, the conditions were nearly impossible. Yet for more than 3 decades, one steady presence in his life was his close friend and former manager, Bill Lamb. Bill lived with Cliff at his Sunningdale mansion, and at times both of their mothers also stayed there when they required care. Their deep friendship soon became a subject of gossip and speculation, with many questioning the nature of their bond. Cliff, however, always pushed back against the rumors. He insisted that he and Bill were simply like brothers. Bill was the one person who saw Cliff away from the stage lights, who stood by him through both career triumphs and personal storms. When Bill Lamb passed away in late 2022, Cliff Richard lost the one constant who had never abandoned him. For decades, Bill had been the closest thing to family Cliff had left. In one of the rare moments when Cliff opened up publicly about the loss, he grew emotional, explaining how Bill never disappeared when life got difficult. Unlike so many others who had drifted away, now at 84, Cliff finds himself without a wife, without children, and without his best friend. His inner circle has become painfully small. Each passing year highlights the stark contrast between his immense public success and his deep personal loneliness. The question lingers, how does someone who spent a lifetime surrounded by crowds, noise, and constant activity adjust when the voices that truly mattered have gone silent? In many ways, fame itself became a prison. These days, Cliff's life is defined by a quiet, routine, peaceful houses. Predictable days that probably look nothing like the golden years he once imagined. When asked why he stayed single, Cliff often gives mixed responses, suggesting that he has accepted his life as it is, but also admitting that the thought of what might have been never completely leaves him. Despite his legendary career selling millions of records, being knighted, becoming a household name, there remains an empty space in his life, where a wife and children might have been. That emptiness grew even heavier after the summer of 2014, when Cliff's public image took a devastating blow. Police raided his Berkshire home, and the entire event became a live national spectacle. With news helicopters capturing the scene from above, Cliff wasn't even in the country at the time. He was in Portugal, where he first saw the shocking coverage of officers removing belongings from his property. The raid was sparked by an anonymous accusation that was later proven baseless, with no charges ever filed. Still, the damage was done. The intrusion deeply scarred both his reputation and his sense of safety. For nearly 2 years after that raid, Cliff's life crumbled. He described feeling contaminated by the whole ordeal. Even though nothing was ever proven against him, the toll on his health was severe. He couldn't sleep, lost a dangerous amount of weight, and suffered frightening heart palpitations that left him wondering if stress would kill him. Fear kept him confined to his home. Even today, as he approaches 85, the scars remain. Those 2 years of hell broke something in him that never truly healed. Winning his legal battle against the BBC and clearing his name could not erase the damage. During a later appearance before the House of Lords, Cliff broke down when asked if recovery was possible. His response was heartbreaking. He didn't believe full recovery could ever be achieved. Though his name was cleared, the original accusations still float around online, and the person who made them has never been held accountable. For someone who built his entire life around his bond with Britain and its people, the betrayal felt both personal and devastating. How could a nation that once celebrated him as a national treasure so quickly turn against him over unproven claims? The scandal didn't just wound his reputation, it changed his entire relationship with Britain. After decades of calling the UK home, Cliff slowly began retreating to Barbados until it eventually became his full-time residence. Yet he doesn't describe it as a dream retirement in paradise. Instead, he calls it a kind of exile, as if he was forced out of the only country where he truly felt he belonged. It is heartbreaking that a man who gave more than 60 years to entertaining British audiences now feels like he cannot walk through the streets of London without whispers following him. Cliff's journey began in 1958 when he walked into a studio and recorded Move It in less than 30 minutes. That single not only launched his career, but essentially gave birth to British rock and roll, making him the UK's answer to Elvis overnight. By the early 1960s, Cliff and his band, The Shadows, weren't just topping the charts, they were shaping the very sound of British popular music. His success seemed unstoppable. Films, sold-out concerts, recording sessions, it was non-stop. While his peers were marrying and starting families, Cliff was stuck on an endless treadmill of work. The career turned him into a legend, but at a personal cost he likely didn't recognize at the time. Then came a turning point. In 1964, at only 24 years old, Cliff made the bold choice to become a born-again Christian. While most pop stars of the era embraced rebellion, Cliff chose a spiritual path that set him apart. He began questioning his lyrics, turned down certain performances, and even considered walking away from music entirely to become a teacher or missionary. Many predicted this would end his career, but instead, it reshaped it. His faith gave him deeper purpose and matured his artistry, though it also built another wall between him and the ordinary life he might have wanted. He didn't party with other celebrities, avoided casual dating, and rejected the wild lifestyle associated with fame. This strengthened his values, but further isolated him from peers and conventional experiences. Despite those challenges, reinvented himself time and again through the 70s. 80s and 90s, delivering hit after hit that became woven into the cultural fabric of Britain. His music played at weddings, Christmas parties, and family gatherings, becoming a soundtrack for generations. He remains the only artist in UK history to have top 5 albums in 8 consecutive decades, with an astonishing 250 million records sold worldwide. Yet those triumphs came with a hidden cost. To stay at the top for so long required total dedication, leaving no room for the ordinary joys most people take for granted at 84. Cliff Richard is still pushing forward. While most people his age are retired, he continues to record and tour, even though the music industry largely ignores him. Radio stations refuse to play his new songs, bluntly telling him that he's too old for their target audience. A brutal truth, the same industry he helped build now treats him like a relic. His once constant smile has faded, replaced by a weariness fans can see. Cliff has even admitted he wakes up every morning afraid his voice might fail him, a terrifying thought for a man whose entire identity is built around performing. Watching him now is bittersweet. Each tour feels less like a celebration and more like a desperate attempt to prove he still matters. The loneliness weighing on him didn't happen overnight. It was the result of years where one album led to the next tour, one project to another, until suddenly he realized he had given everything to fame, while personal connections slipped away. Though he has loyal friends like Gloria Hunniford and Paul Gambaccini who care for him, those friendships cannot replace the intimacy of a family. The reality of his life shows the harsh truth. Professional success, no matter how extraordinary, cannot replace the fundamental human need for love, companionship, and belonging. Today, Cliff Richard faces his later years with recognition and wealth, but without the close family bonds that could bring comfort. The man who once filled stadiums now spends his days in a much smaller, quieter world. His legacy is secure, but his heart carries the weight of sacrifices that can never be undone. So what do you think is most heartbreaking about Cliff Richard's story? Is it that his greatest triumphs ran parallel with his deepest personal losses? Or that now in the very industry he helped shape, he's fighting just to prove he still has a place?